The words sliced through the marble lobby of Manhattan's most prestigious hotel, like a blade through silk, ending a career in seconds. Brittany Walsh, the hotel's guest services manager, stood rigid, her severe blonde bun matching the razor-thin smirk on her face as she blocked the path of a poised black woman wearing a charcoal-tailored suit and holding a luxury leather briefcase. Brittany didn't realize that her casual assumption was being broadcast live to tens of thousands of people, nor did she know that the woman she was dismissing actually owned the entire multi-billion-dollar hospitality empire. The tension in the air was palpable as a crowd began to gather, drawing their phones like weapons in a modern-day conflict of corporate bias. It was exactly 3:07 p.m. at the Meridian Grand Hotel when Diana Carter checked her luxury watch, noting she had exactly 8 minutes before her quarterly board meeting was scheduled to begin. It should have taken her less than 30 seconds to cross the opulent, high-ceilinged lobby to reach the private executive elevator bank, but Brittany had planted herself firmly in the way. Diana looked at the manager with a calm, unbothered expression that had been perfected through decades of negotiating high-stakes corporate mergers. "Excuse me," Diana said, her voice carrying the quiet, undeniable authority of someone who was accustomed to being listened to without question. "I need to access the executive floors for an upcoming meeting." Brittany's eyes traveled slowly from Diana's bespoke Italian leather shoes up to her briefcase, lingering with an obvious cold skepticism that required no translation. The executive floors are strictly restricted to registered high-profile guests and authorized corporate personnel. Only. Brittany replied, her tone dripping with a condescending politeness designed to humiliate. Diana kept her composure completely level, refusing to give the manager the emotional reaction she was clearly looking for. "I am fully aware of the hotel's access policy," Diana responded smoothly. "Do you understand it, though?" Brittany's smirk widened slightly as she crossed her arms. "We maintain a very specific, exclusive atmosphere for our clientele here, and I am sure you can appreciate that we have to be certain about who we allow up there." Around them, the grand lobby hummed with the standard afternoon activities of a luxury Manhattan establishment. Wealthy business travelers checked their phones. International tourists snapped photos of the massive crystal chandeliers hanging from the ceiling, and a young social media influencer near the concierge desk was currently live streaming her check-in process to her thousands of followers. Hearing the sudden shift in tone near the elevators, the influencer subtly turned her phone camera toward the confrontation, capturing the entire interaction in high definition. Diana reached into her leather briefcase and calmly withdrew a sleek liquid metal platinum card, holding it up so the manager could see it clearly. "I believe this card should suffice to grant me access to where I need to go," Diana said. Brittany barely glanced at the rare American Express Centurion card before shaking her head with a dismissive sigh. "Anyone can look successful and carry a premium credit card these days," she said coldly. "What I actually need from you is real, undeniable proof that you belong in an upscale establishment like this one." The insulting words hung heavily in the air, causing several nearby guests to stop talking completely. Diana's facial expression did not change by even a fraction, but her physical posture shifted into something remarkably commanding. Instead of arguing, she calmly pulled out her own smartphone, activated the high-resolution camera, and pointed it directly at the manager. "I am sorry, but could you please repeat exactly what you just said to me?" Diana asked, her voice remaining perfectly steady and professional. "I want to make absolutely sure that I understand your official position and your reasoning correctly." Brittany's cheeks flushed a deep crimson as she realized she was being recorded, but instead of backing down, her arrogance drove her to double down on her statement. "I said that this luxury establishment has very high standards," she stated clearly, looking directly into Diana's camera lens. "We cater specifically to a certain demographic of society, and frankly, your presence here is making our registered guests feel uncomfortable." The live-streaming influencer had moved significantly closer, now her phone perfectly capturing every single word that left Brittany's mouth. On her screen, the viewer count was climbing at an astronomical rate, jumping from 15,000 to 25,000 in a matter of seconds as outraged comments flooded the chat window. People were expressing absolute disbelief that this kind of blatant discrimination was happening in the heart of New York City. But Diana had already anticipated the power of documentation. Her phone was positioned perfectly to capture not just Brittany's hostile face, but also the prominent, recognizable branding of the Meridian Grand Hotel in the background. "I would like to speak immediately with your direct supervisor," Diana said, lowering her phone slightly but keeping the recording active. Brittany straightened her shoulders, completely unaware of the corporate cliff she was about to step over. "I am the highest-ranking supervisor currently on duty in this lobby," she snapped back. "And I am telling you officially that unless you are a registered paying guest or have documented pre-approved business here, you need to turn around and leave the premises immediately." Diana checked her watch once again. It was now 3:10 p.m., leaving her with exactly 5 minutes before her board members expected her upstairs. "I do have specific business here," Diana stated firmly. "What kind of business could you possibly have on the executive restricted floors?" Brittany asked, letting out a short mocking laugh that sounded like glass breaking on stone. "Do you even know what that exclusive space costs per hour to reserve? Do you have any real conception of the kind of high-caliber people who utilize that room for their enterprises?" "I have an incredibly good idea of what it takes," Diana replied quietly. Brittany gestured dismissively toward the grand revolving glass doors of the main entrance. "Look, I am trying to be as polite as possible under the circumstances, but you are clearly in the wrong location," she said with a fake smile. "There is a perfectly nice mid-range Holiday Inn located about 6 blocks south of here that might be significantly more suitable for your specific needs." On the influencer's live stream, the viewer count had just crossed 50,000 concurrent users, and a newly created hashtag Hotel Discrimination was beginning to trend rapidly across social media platforms in the tri-state area. Diana's phone buzzed softly in her hand with an automated calendar reminder, "Board Meeting Conference Room, A 3:15 p.m. She calmly dismissed the notification without breaking eye contact with the manager. "So, just to be completely clear for the record, you are actively refusing me access to the executive floors because you do not personally believe that I belong in this environment. Is that correct?" Diana asked. Brittany scoffed, adjusting her blazer. "I am refusing you access because you have failed to provide adequate government-issued identification or verifiable proof of a business appointment, even after I asked. Even though I have already shown you a premium card that requires an immense annual fee and a proven net worth," Diana countered. "Anyone can obtain a credit card if they find the right loophole," Brittany retorted, her voice rising slightly. "I do not care what kind of financial account you claim to have. Our hotel policy is absolute and it applies to everyone equally." At that moment, a senior security guard approached the elevator bank from across the expansive lobby. He was a tall, broad-shouldered man named Marcus, and his face clearly showed that he was incredibly uncomfortable with the escalating situation he had been summoned to handle. "Is everything all right here, Ms. Walsh?" Marcus asked, his eyes darting between the two women. Marcus, This woman is refusing to leave the lobby after being instructed to do so multiple times, Brittany explained rapidly, her tone shifting to one of authority. She keeps insisting that she has an important meeting in the executive conference room, but she refuses to show proper identification to prove it. Marcus looked at Diana, taking in her professional demeanor, her expensive suit, and the high-end briefcase she held. He genuinely wished he was anywhere else in the world at that exact moment. "Ma'am, if you could just cooperate and show us some form of ID, we can clear this up quickly," he said mildly. Diana reached toward her briefcase, as if to pull out her wallet. But then she paused. She looked at the influencer, who was still live streaming, then at her own phone, and finally up at the prominent security cameras mounted on the hotel's marble pillars. She knew that every single second of this interaction was being recorded from multiple angles, creating an undeniable digital paper trail. She had a massive choice to make right now. She could easily pull out her corporate ID card, reveal her identity as the chief executive officer, and end the confrontation quietly. Or she could let the situation play out to its absolute logical conclusion to see exactly how deep the structural biases of her staff actually ran. Her watch read 3:12 p.m. In 3 minutes, 12 of the most powerful hospitality executives in the country would be sitting around a mahogany table on the 15th floor waiting for her to arrive so they could discuss the company's multi-million-dollar diversity initiatives and national expansion plans. Diana slowly slipped her hand away from her briefcase without retrieving her identification. "I would strongly prefer to speak directly with the general manager of this specific property," Diana stated, her voice full of calm conviction. Brittany's nostrils flared with intense irritation. "The general manager is booked solid in high-level meetings all afternoon and cannot be disturbed by walk-ins," she snapped. "Marcus, please escort this woman out of the building immediately." Marcus shifted his weight uncomfortably, looking at Diana with a pleading expression. "Ma'am, I am really sorry, but I am going to have to ask you to follow me toward the exit now," he said. "I am not going anywhere," Diana replied smoothly, standing her ground. The entire lobby had grown remarkably quiet over the last 2 minutes as nearby conversations died down completely. Guests were becoming acutely aware of the dramatic confrontation unfolding right next to the exclusive elevators. Dozens of smartphones were now visible in the hands of onlookers, all recording the scene. The influencer's live stream had just skyrocketed past 75,000 viewers, and the chat was moving so fast it was almost impossible to read. People were demanding to know the exact name and location of the hotel so they could begin flooding their phone lines with complaints. A prominent businessman in a tailored suit stopped mid-stride to watch the scene unfold, while a wealthy couple holding luxury shopping bags whispered to each other in disgust. Diana remained completely serene on the outside, but she quietly accessed her phone to send a quick encrypted text message directly to her global corporate legal team. The message read, "Emergency at Manhattan Flagship Lobby. Serious discrimination incident occurring in real time. Document everything immediately. Full civil rights violation investigation required." The text sent with a soft, distinct chime that signaled the beginning of a corporate earthquake. Marcus took a small step forward, his voice remaining gentle but firm as he tried to maintain order. "Ma'am, I really need you to cooperate and come with me," he repeated. "On what exact legal grounds are you attempting to remove me?" Diana asked. "On the grounds of trespassing on private property," Brittany interrupted before the guard could speak. "This lobby is private property, and since you have been asked to leave and refuse, you are now legally trespassing. This lobby is private property that is actively open to the general public for business purposes," Diana corrected her smoothly. I am standing here completely quietly, whereas your aggressive actions are the sole reason a scene is being created." At that moment, a second younger security guard named Trevor materialized from the corridor near the luxury gift shop. He had eager eyes and a hand that kept drifting nervously toward his radio. "Is there a major problem over here?" Trevor asked, looking for an opportunity to impress his supervisor. "There is no problem at all," Diana answered before anyone else could open their mouth. "I am simply waiting for an elevator to take me to my meeting. She has been asked to leave multiple times by management." Brittany snapped angrily, and she continues to defy our explicit directives. "And I have explained to you multiple times that I have significant business to conduct on the executive floor," Diana countered. Trevor looked at Marcus for guidance, but the older guard looked exhausted and wary. "Ma'am, what specific business do you claim to have upstairs?" Trevor asked. "I am attending the quarterly board of directors meeting," Diana stated clearly. Trevor let out a short laugh before he could catch himself. "A board meeting? In conference room A on the 15th floor?" he asked, a smirk forming on his face. "Yes, exactly there," Diana replied. The laughter died instantly in Trevor's throat as his eyes suddenly darted from Diana's face over to Brittany, who had gone completely still. "Wait a minute." Trevor started, his voice dropping significantly as a look of intense realization washed over him. "That is the private floor reserved for the—" He stopped mid-sentence. "That is the Carter Hospitality Executive Suite, isn't it?" he finished quietly, his face losing all of its color. Brittany shot him a furious look that could have melted steel. "It doesn't matter what the name of the suite is," she hissed. "She does not have a verified corporate authorization badge, and she needs to be removed." But the entire dynamic among the security team had completely shifted in an instant. Trevor was backing away slowly, his eyes wide with sudden terror, while Marcus took a deliberate step back, realizing that something was terribly wrong. Suddenly, Diana's phone began to buzz with an incoming call. "Excuse me for one moment," she said to the group, answering the call immediately. "This is Diana Carter," she said clearly into the receiver. The sound of her full name hung in the air like a heavy glass ornament waiting to shatter against the marble floor. Brittany's face went through an entire spectrum of colors in a matter of seconds, shifting from an angry pink to deep red, then to stark white, and finally to a sickly green. "Yes, Harold, I am running just a few minutes late for the session," Diana continued into the phone, her voice echoing slightly in the quiet lobby. "There has been a minor procedural issue down here in the main lobby. No, it is nothing that cannot be resolved permanently. I will be up there shortly." She ended the call with a soft click and looked expectantly at the 3 hotel employees who surrounded her. Trevor was now actively retreating toward the back corridor, trying to put as much physical distance as possible between himself and the impending disaster. Marcus was staring at Diana with absolute dawning recognition, realizing he had seen her face on every corporate newsletter and annual report for the past 5 years. Brittany remained completely frozen, her mouth slightly open, her complexion the color of old faded newspaper. "Now then," Diana said with a pleasant razor-sharp smile, "let us discuss my elevator access once again." By this time, the influencer's live stream had officially reached over 100,000 concurrent viewers worldwide. People in the comments had successfully identified the exact location as the flagship Meridian Grand Hotel in Manhattan, and hundreds of people were actively calling the hotel's main telephone lines to express their absolute outrage. The hashtag was trending nationally. A panicked guest services associate named Sarah came running over from the front reception desk, her face completely flushed from physical exertion. "Ms. Walsh," she whispered urgently, tugging at Brittany's sleeve. "There has been a massive mistake, a truly catastrophic mistake." "Not right now," Sarah Brittany snapped, trying desperately to maintain her fading composure. "But Ms. Walsh, you don't understand. The phone lines are completely jammed and won't stop ringing," Sarah whispered frantically. "People are calling from all over the country saying that we are actively discriminating against a high-profile guest on a viral live stream." "I said not right now," Brittany shouted, completely losing her professional veneer. Sarah immediately retreated, but she didn't go far. She hovered at the edge of the circle, watching the disaster unfold. Diana checked her watch one final time, 3:14 p.m. "I have exactly 1 minute to make it to my destination," she stated calmly. "Are you going to step aside and let me pass? Or shall I go upstairs and explain to the entire assembled board why their multi-million-dollar quarterly review is being delayed?" The board. Brittany's voice cracked significantly, her confidence completely evaporating. "Yes, the board of directors for the Carter Hospitality Group," Diana said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You know the global parent company that actually owns this entire hotel and pays your salary?" The words fell like massive, heavy stones into a completely still pond, sending shockwaves of pure realization through the surrounding crowd of onlookers. Trevor was now completely halfway across the lobby, desperately attempting to blend into a large group of international tourists who were checking in at the front desk. Marcus had entirely removed his hand from his security radio and was studying the pattern of the marble floor tiles with an intense, desperate concentration, hoping to escape notice. Sarah had her phone pressed tightly against her ear, speaking in rapid, panicked whispers to the hotel's general manager, who was up in his office. Brittany stood entirely alone in the center of the grand lobby, finally beginning to comprehend the astronomical magnitude of the career-ending mistake she had just made. Suddenly the executive elevator bank chimed softly, and the polished steel doors of the private elevator opened smoothly. A middle-aged man, dressed in an incredibly expensive tailored corporate suit, stepped out into the lobby. He took one look at the massive crowd, noticed the sea of smartphones pointing in one direction, and immediately approached the group with quick, highly nervous steps. "Ms. Carter," he called out anxiously, his voice full of concern, "the entire board is sitting upstairs waiting for your arrival. Is everything absolutely all right down here?" Diana smiled for the very first time since she had walked through the front doors of the building. "Everything is going to be perfectly fine, James," she replied smoothly to the man who was the hotel's assistant general manager. "There was just a slight systemic misunderstanding regarding building access and who is allowed to enter the executive spaces." James looked around the immediate area, taking in the defensive postures of the security staff, the dozens of phones recording his every move, the viral live stream, and the completely stricken, terrified expression on Brittany's face. In an instant, his own face went through the exact same dramatic color changes that Brittany's had, minus any hope of recovery. "Oh, no," he whispered under his breath, his hands starting to shake. "Oh, no, please no." The entire grand lobby fell into an absolute dead silence, broken only by the gentle mechanical hum of the building's massive air conditioning system and the distant rhythmic chiming of the elevator bells. James stood completely paralyzed, his face cycling through a rapid succession of emotions, sudden recognition, absolute horror, and the desperate, futile hope that he was somehow experiencing a vivid nightmare. Diana Carter, the chief executive officer of the global Carter Hospitality Group, and the sole owner of over 43 luxury boutique hotels across North America, calmly adjusted the strap of her leather briefcase and took a deliberate step toward the open elevator doors. "Shall we head upstairs now, James?" she asked pleasantly, her voice carrying the exact same calm, unbothered authority that she had maintained from the very beginning of the ordeal. "Ms. Carter, James's voice cracked loudly, sounding like thick winter ice fracturing on a frozen lake. "I had absolutely no idea that you were visiting our property today. I am deeply, profoundly sorry that you were subjected to this. To being actively harassed in the main lobby of my own flagship establishment," Diana asked, her voice turning into silk wrapped over hardened steel. "To having my basic civil rights openly violated on camera in front of over 100,000 people." The number she stated was actually incredibly conservative. By this point, the influencer's live-streamed video had gone completely viral across multiple major social media platforms simultaneously. The hotel's entire digital infrastructure was beginning to buckle under the weight of the massive public backlash. Diana turned around slowly to face Brittany, who looked as though she was actively calculating the physical distance to the nearest emergency exit door. "Brittany, isn't it?" Diana asked, her eyes locking onto the manager. "I believe just a few moments ago we were having a very thorough discussion regarding your hotel policies. You were explaining something to me about maintaining specific standards and catering exclusively to a very particular demographic, if I recall correctly." Brittany opened her mouth to speak, but absolutely no sound came out of her throat. Her hands were trembling so violently that she could barely manage to smooth down her hair. "What is the matter?" the live-streaming influencer called out from the crowd, moving her phone even closer to capture the dramatic corporate downfall. "Why don't you tell the chief executive officer exactly why she doesn't belong in her own multi-million-dollar hotel? Now, go ahead, say it on camera." "I truly did not know." Brittany finally managed to stammer out, her voice barely audible over the hum of the lobby. "You did not know what exactly?" Diana asked, her tone completely piercing. "Did you not know that I was the chief executive officer of this company? Or did you not know that racial discrimination is completely illegal under federal law, regardless of who you are attempting to discriminate against?" At that exact moment, Diana's phone buzzed with a direct text message from her head of corporate legal affairs. The text read, "Formal public press release has been drafted. Top civil rights attorneys are on immediate standby. Human Resources is demanding a full incident report." Diana casually dismissed the notification and continued to look directly at Brittany, who seemed to be physically shrinking with every single passing second. "Here is exactly what you did know." In that moment, Diana stated, her voice never rising above a conversational professional volume. "You knew that I was a black woman standing in your lobby wearing an expensive business suit, carrying a high-end luxury briefcase and holding a credit card that requires a massive financial standing. You knew that I was completely polite, well-dressed, articulate, and clearly belonged in a high-level business environment. But you decided in your own mind that none of those objective facts mattered whatsoever, simply because of what I look like, and your own personal assumptions about who belongs in luxury spaces." The crowd of onlookers in the lobby had grown exponentially over the last 5 minutes. Hotel guests were now lining the upper mezzanine levels, looking down at the dramatic scene unfolding on the marble floor below. Various staff members, from housekeeping to desk agents, peered out from behind the reception desks and concierge stations, watching the total collapse of their guest services manager. Marcus, the senior security guard, stood holding his radio, but seemed completely terrified to use it or make any sudden movements. Trevor had completely vanished from the area, having retreated deep into the employee break room to immediately begin scrubbing his digital footprint and updating his professional resume. Sarah, the associate, was still frantically whispering into her phone, attempting to explain the corporate equivalent of a Category 5 hurricane to the property's general manager. Diana said, turning her attention sharply back to the assistant general manager. How long has Ms. Walsh been employed at this specific flagship location? She has been with us for approximately 18 months, ma'am. James answered automatically, looking as though he wanted to immediately swallow his own words the moment they left his mouth. And during those 18 months of employment, did she receive our mandatory corporate diversity, equity, and inclusion training? Diana inquired. Yes, she absolutely did. James nodded miserably, his forehead covered in sweat. All management-level staff are strictly required to complete the full training program within their first 90 days of hire. Excellent, Diana said, her smile sharp enough to cut through diamonds. So that means she was fully, consciously aware of our strict corporate policy regarding non-discrimination. James nodded again, looking down at the floor. And she was also fully aware of the severe legal implications of actively denying service or building access to an individual based entirely on their race. Is that correct? Yes, ma'am, James whispered. Perfect, Diana stated clearly. That completely establishes prior corporate knowledge and deliberate intent on the record. My personal team of civil rights attorneys will be incredibly pleased with this documentation. Brittany suddenly found her voice through her panic. Ms. Carter, please, I want to offer you my deepest, most sincere personal apology, she sobbed, tears finally spilling over her eyes. I made a truly terrible, catastrophic mistake today. If you could just find it in your heart to give me another chance. Oh, you are absolutely going to apologize, Diana interrupted her smoothly, but your apology is not meant for me. Diana gestured broadly toward the influencer's phone camera, which was still broadcasting live to an audience that had just surpassed 200,000 concurrent viewers. You are going to apologize directly to them, Diana said. You are going to apologize to the hundreds of thousands of people who just watched you demonstrate exactly why this entire industry still desperately requires strict civil rights legislation. You are going to apologize to every single minority professional who has ever been made to feel like they do not belong in a luxury space where they have every legal and financial right to be. Brittany's entire face crumpled in absolute despair as she realized her career in hospitality was completely over. Please, Ms. Carter, I desperately need this job to survive, she pleaded. I have massive student loans to pay off and my rent in Manhattan is incredibly high. You should have thought about your personal financial responsibilities before you decided to play the role of a racial gatekeeper in the lobby of my hotel, Diana responded coldly. At that exact moment, Diana's phone began to ring loudly. She glanced down at the screen and saw that it was Harold Westbrook, the prominent chairman of the board of directors. He was undoubtedly wondering why the CEO was currently late for the most important meeting of the quarter. Excuse me, Diana said to the group, answering the call immediately. Harold. Yes, I am currently downstairs in the main lobby. No, we are going to need to significantly adjust our meeting agenda for this afternoon. We have an immediate high-priority personnel and legal crisis that requires the board's direct attention. She paused, listening to Harold's panicked response on the other end. Yes, the entire incident is currently being live-streamed across the internet to hundreds of thousands of people. No, Harold. I couldn't have planned better or more public exposure for our upcoming diversity initiatives if I had tried. We will discuss the full details upstairs. Diana ended the call, slipped her phone back into her briefcase, and took a final look around the chaotic lobby. The crowd had officially tripled in size over the last 10 minutes, and news of the live stream had spread so fast that a local television news van had just pulled up directly outside the hotel's glass doors, its satellite dish rapidly extending toward the sky. "James, I need you to execute 2 critical directives for me immediately," Diana ordered. "Anything you need." "Ms. Carter," James replied instantly, standing at absolute attention. "First, I need you to ensure that every single second of security camera footage from the lobby over the past hour is fully preserved and locked down. Every camera angle, every timestamp, and every digital backup must be compiled. Our corporate legal team will require certified copies within the hour." "Yes, ma'am, I will handle that personally," James said. "Second, I want a comprehensive written list of every single hotel employee who stood in this lobby, witnessed this discriminatory incident occur, and completely failed to step forward and intervene." James's face went even paler than it already was. "Ma'am, I am not entirely sure if some of them knew what was happening. I am not asking for your personal opinion or your assessment of their thoughts, James," Diana said, her voice dropping to a dangerous, icy register. "I am giving you a direct executive instruction. Do you understand?" "Yes, ma'am." "Understood," James stammered. Diana then turned her attention to Marcus, the senior security guard, who straightened up unconsciously under her powerful gaze. "Marcus, you showed a modicum of professionalism compared to your manager," she said, "but you still actively attempted to remove a legitimate individual from a public lobby based solely on another employee's biased, unfounded assessment. That severe lapse in judgment is going to be fully documented in my official report." Marcus nodded his head stiffly. "I completely understand, ma'am, and I apologize for my compliance," he said. "Good," Diana stated. "Now I believe I have an important board meeting to attend." Diana turned around and walked confidently toward the open executive elevator, her high heels clicking sharply against the polished marble floor with a steady, powerful rhythm that signaled the inevitability of change. As the elevator doors began to slide shut, she looked out at the lobby one final time. Brittany was now crying openly and hysterically, completely surrounded by onlookers, holding cameras, standing amidst the total wreckage of her professional life. James was speaking rapidly and frantically into his radio, alerting the general manager that his afternoon was about to become an absolute legal nightmare. The elevator doors closed with a soft, quiet whisper, but Diana's real corporate work was just beginning. The 15th floor of the Meridian Grand Hotel housed the expansive executive conference suite, a stunning masterpiece of modern architectural glass and polished steel that offered breathtaking panoramic views of the entire Manhattan skyline. On any other normal business day, this massive room would have been buzzing with standard corporate discussions regarding quarterly profit margins, real estate acquisitions, and international expansion strategies. Today, however, the room hummed with an intense, palpable tension of an impending corporate disaster. 12 of the country's most powerful board members sat around a massive, highly polished mahogany table, their faces reflecting varying degrees of extreme concern, intense curiosity, and barely contained panic. Harold Westbrook, the veteran board chairman, had his phone pressed tightly against his ear, speaking in the clipped, rapid tones of a high-level executive attempting to manage a massive public relations nightmare in real time. "Yes, I understand. The video has gone completely viral," Harold was saying into his phone, his voice shaking slightly. "What I desperately need to know right now from our legal team is our immediate liability exposure. What does legal say our risk is? Christ." Diana entered the executive boardroom at exactly 3:22 p.m., precisely 7 minutes late, by her incredibly strict personal standards. That delay alone signaled to everyone in the room that the situation downstairs was exactly as severe as it appeared on social media. "Harold," she said calmly, taking her rightful seat at the absolute head of the long mahogany table, "I assume that you and the rest of the board members have been fully briefed on this afternoon's events in the lobby." Harold slowly ended his phone call and set his device down on the table with the extreme care of a bomb disposal expert handling highly unstable explosives. "Diana, please tell me that there is some crucial context or some massive misunderstanding that we are currently missing here," Harold pleaded, looking at her with desperate eyes. "There is definitely context," Harold Diana replied smoothly, "but I can assure you that it is not the kind of context that is going to help our company's legal standing whatsoever." With a single elegant gesture, she activated the boardroom's high-tech presentation system, and the massive wall-mounted digital screens instantly came to life. The digital screens did not display profit margins or revenue projections. Instead, they showed real-time, rapidly updating social media analytics that painted a devastating picture of sudden viral infamy. The hashtag hotel discrimination had already accumulated over 2.3 million mentions in less than an hour. The automated sentiment analysis algorithm showed an astronomical 89% negative rating toward the Meridian Grand brand, and the company's stock price was already down 4.2% in after-hours trading. The trending related terms on the screen were stark boycott, lawsuit, racism, and CEO. Our guest services manager, Brittany Walsh, actively refused me access to this building based entirely on her own narrow assessment of my physical appearance. Diana began her explanation, her voice carrying the exact same measured professional tone she had used down in the lobby. She explicitly stated on camera that I did not belong in this environment, suggested that I should go find a cheap Holiday Inn instead, and then instructed our security personnel to have me forcibly removed from the property. Board member Patricia Chen slowly raised her hand, her face full of concern. "Diana, surely there must have been some kind of procedural misunderstanding or a breakdown in communication," she suggested. "Patricia, I can assure you with absolute certainty that there were no misunderstandings today," Diana responded firmly. "There were clear, blatant civil rights violations that were fully recorded on multiple high-definition devices, witnessed by hundreds of onlookers in real time and broadcast entirely live to over 200,000 viewers globally." She clicked a button on her remote, shifting the presentation to the next slide, which detailed the company's immediate legal exposure. "Our corporate attorneys have already identified 14 separate and distinct causes of action under federal and state civil rights laws, including the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Civil Rights Act of 1968, the New York State Human Rights Law, and the New York City Human Rights Law." The entire boardroom fell into an absolute stunned silence, broken only by a quiet, muttered curse from Harold. The potential legal damages for a flagship incident of this magnitude range anywhere from $500,000 to over $2.3 million, Diana continued smoothly. "And that is a highly conservative estimate that does not include punitive damages, external attorney fees, or massive public settlement costs. And that is assuming that we can somehow manage to keep this case entirely out of federal court." Another prominent board member, Marcus Sullivan, leaned forward over the table. "Diana, what are our immediate options for effective damage control?" he asked. "Our traditional options for damage control are practically non-existent," Diana stated bluntly, clicking to the next slide. The entire incident was live-streamed by completely independent third parties. Traditional corporate crisis management strategies and public relations spin are entirely ineffective when the raw, unfiltered evidence is already public, permanent, and unedited. The screens now displayed a massive cascading waterfall of social media posts, national news articles, and viral commentary pieces that had emerged in just the last few minutes. Major news networks had already picked up the story, and a prominent Wall Street Journal reporter was actively standing in their lobby at that very second. Harold rubbed his temples in sheer exhaustion. "Diana, what is our financial exposure beyond this single flagship property?" he asked. "Systemic reputation damage across our entire portfolio," Diana explained clearly. "Our Meridian brand operates in 43 premium locations across North America. Early data analysis suggests widespread calls for an immediate boycott of all our properties globally." She clicked the remote again, revealing financial projections that made several board members visibly wince. Conservative estimates suggest an immediate 15 to 20% decline in total room bookings over the next quarter if we handle this crisis poorly. That translates directly to approximately $47 million in lost corporate revenue. "And what happens if we handle this situation perfectly?" Patricia asked. "If we handle it absolutely perfectly, we might be able to limit the financial damage to an 8 to 10% drop," Diana answered. "But handling it perfectly requires immediate, decisive, and radical corporate action that demonstrates a genuine, undeniable commitment to systemic change, not just standard corporate public relations damage control." The presentation shifted to show a highly detailed minute-by-minute timeline of the confrontation downstairs, completely synchronized with social media engagement metrics. The active discrimination occurred over a continuous 7-minute period, Diana explained to the board. During that entire time, our manager continuously doubled down on her discriminatory position despite having multiple clear opportunities to de-escalate and reconsider her stance. She demonstrated a complete awareness of company policy, a willful violation of civil rights law, and a deliberate desire to humiliate a customer. Board member David Kim spoke up. "What about the other employees who were involved in the incident?" he asked. Assistant General Manager James Morrison showed appropriate concern only after he fully understood my identity, but his response was entirely reactive rather than proactive. Diana analyzed. Security guard Marcus Thompson demonstrated professionalism, but still fully participated in the attempted removal. Security guard Trevor Mills completely abandoned his post during an active security incident out of sheer panic. Diana paused the presentation on a slide boldly titled Personnel Actions. "Brittany Walsh will be terminated for cause effective immediately," Diana announced. The executive elevator doors slid closed behind Diana, carrying her back down to a lobby that would never look quite the same again. When she stepped out onto the marble floor, she found that the area had transformed into an absolute media circus. Multiple television news crews had set up their equipment inside and outside, and reporters were actively interviewing guests and staff members. The online conversation had exploded, with the hashtag now surpassing 4.7 million mentions globally. James Morrison was waiting for her right outside the elevator bank, his face still holding the color of damp concrete. "Ms. Carter, I have prepared all of the official termination paperwork for Miss Walsh," he said, holding out a manila folder with trembling hands. "She is currently in the employee break room under supervision and is begging to see you before security escorts her out." "Where is she exactly?" Diana asked. "She is in the main break room behind the central kitchen," James replied. "And what is the status of our public relations team?" "Our external PR firm has arrived, and they are strongly recommending that we hold a formal press conference in the grand ballroom within the hour," James stated. I told them to hold off until you approved. Good, tell them to begin setting up the ballroom immediately, Diana ordered. Have them draft a preliminary statement, but make it absolutely clear that I will personally review and edit every single word before anything is released to the media. She walked purposefully through the lobby, noting how the remaining staff members immediately straightened up and stood at attention the moment they saw her pass. The guests were whispering and pointing, and the entire atmosphere was charged with the electricity of massive corporate change in motion. The employee break room was a small, functional, windowless space located deep behind the main kitchen corridors. Brittany Walsh sat alone at a round plastic table, surrounded by boxes of tissues and the absolute wreckage of her professional career. Her mascara had run completely down her face, leaving dark trails on her cheeks, and her hands shook violently as she attempted to take a sip of water from a paper cup. "Ms. Walsh," Diana said, stepping into the quiet room and closing the door behind her. "I understand that you specifically requested to speak with me before your departure." Brittany looked up, her eyes incredibly red, swollen, and filled with deep panic. "Ms. Carter, please, I need you to know that I am not a racist person," she sobbed, immediately gripping her paper cup. "I was truly just following what I believed were the hotel's long-standing unspoken policies and cultural guidelines." "Unspoken policies?" Diana inquired, sitting down directly across from her at the small table. "Exactly what unspoken policies are you referring to?" "Policies regarding the specific kind of high-end guests that we are supposed to cater to, and about actively maintaining the hotel's luxury exclusive image," Brittany whispered, wiping her face. "During my initial training 18 months ago, I was explicitly told by my senior supervisors that we needed to be incredibly selective about who we allowed to loiter in certain high-profile areas of the property." "And who exactly gave you those specific instructions?" Diana asked, her voice calm but intensely focused. "It was the previous guest services manager who trained me," Brittany confessed. "She told me directly that our wealthy, high-net-worth guests expected a very specific, refined environment, and that we needed to be extremely careful about letting the wrong kind of people into the executive spaces, because it could directly hurt our reputation and our overall corporate revenue." Diana calmly pulled out her phone, activated the audio recorder, and placed it on the table between them. "I need you to repeat exactly what you just said, using the precise names and details of the individuals who instituted these informal practices," Diana stated firmly. "I don't want to get anyone else into severe trouble," Brittany stammered, looking at the phone. "Ms. Walsh, you are already in massive personal legal jeopardy for blatant civil rights violations that have been broadcast to millions of people," Diana explained to her with absolute clarity. "Your full, unrestricted cooperation in identifying these systemic underlying issues within our operation is the only thing that might prevent a full-scale federal investigation into your personal conduct." Brittany's hands went completely still as a new wave of terror washed over her. "What do you mean by a federal investigation?" she whispered. "The United States Department of Justice takes clear violations of the Civil Rights Act incredibly seriously," Diana stated coldly, "especially when the evidence is irrefutable and has been viewed by millions. You could potentially face personal civil liability and federal prosecution. But if you cooperate fully with our internal legal investigation, our corporate attorneys will take that into account." For the next 20 minutes, Brittany completely poured her heart out, outlining a deeply embedded, subtle pattern of systemic discrimination that had existed within the flagship hotel's daily culture for years. She described informal dress code enforcements that disproportionately targeted minority guests, specialized training sessions that emphasized guest selectivity and performance reviews that subtly rewarded staff members for keeping certain demographics away from premium spaces. Diana recorded every single word, taking detailed notes that would serve as the absolute foundation for a massive company-wide investigation. Your employment with Carter Hospitality is officially terminated effective immediately, Diana said when she finished. You will receive your standard contractual severance, but you are strictly required to sign a comprehensive cooperation agreement with our legal department. What is going to happen to me now? Brittany asked quietly. Now you will write a full public apology that acknowledges your severe mistakes without offering a single excuse, Diana said. You will fully cooperate with our investigators, and you will hope that your genuine remorse is enough to move things forward. An hour later, Diana stood confidently behind a sleek modern podium in the hotel's grand ballroom facing a massive wall of television cameras, flashing lights, and eager reporters. The urgent press conference was being live-streamed across every major digital platform, ensuring that her official response reached the exact same massive viral audience that had witnessed the original confrontation in the lobby. This afternoon, an employee at our flagship property engaged in blatant discriminatory conduct that directly violated our strict company policies, federal civil rights law, and basic human decency. Diana began her address, her voice echoing powerfully throughout the crowded ballroom. I want to be absolutely unequivocally clear to the public. There is no excuse whatsoever for what occurred in our lobby today. There is no context that makes this behavior acceptable, and there is absolutely no explanation that justifies treating any human being with such profound disrespect. She paused for a moment, looking directly into the primary camera lenses. But I am not standing here today to simply offer a standard corporate apology and quickly move on, she continued. I am here to announce immediate, concrete, and legally binding structural changes that will ensure an incident like this never happens again at any property bearing our name. She then clearly outlined the extensive reform package that the board of directors had unanimously approved. Upstairs, the massive annual investment in real-time behavioral monitoring protocols, mandatory quarterly diversity and bias training for all staff members, and a strict zero-tolerance policy that dictates automatic termination for cause for any discriminatory act. Furthermore, she announced the immediate creation of an independent corporate oversight board, which would be chaired by prominent external civil rights attorneys and community leaders, possessing the full authority to investigate guest complaints and mandate systemic operational changes. We are also implementing strict financial accountability measures throughout our leadership ranks, Diana announced to the press. Moving forward, all management-level bonuses will be directly tied to proven diversity metrics and successful discrimination prevention. Additionally, any employee who steps forward to report discriminatory behavior within our properties will receive absolute whistleblower protections and substantial financial rewards. A prominent investigative reporter raised her hand from the front row. Ms. Carter, corporate critics might argue that these extensive changes are merely a public relations gesture to protect your stock price. How can the public know that these reforms will be permanent? Because I am making them legally binding, Diana responded without a single second of hesitation. These exact policies are currently being written directly into our official corporate charter and our international franchise agreements. Any future violations will trigger automatic severe financial penalties, and in severe cases, the immediate termination of the property's franchise license. The high-intensity press conference lasted for 45 minutes, with Diana answering every single difficult question with the exact same directness, honesty, and composure she had maintained throughout the entire day. She openly acknowledged her company's internal cultural failures while providing a clear, verifiable roadmap for industry-wide improvement. When the session finally concluded, she returned to her private office on the 20th floor and pulled up the global social media analytics one last time. The conversation had shifted dramatically. While the incident was still trending at the top of the charts, the public narrative had transformed from outrage into widespread praise for the company's unprecedented accountability and rapid response. More importantly, 3 other major international hotel chains had already issued emergency press releases announcing immediate reviews of their own internal diversity policies in an effort to get ahead of similar issues. Suddenly, Diana's phone rang and she saw it was her daughter calling from her college dorm room. "Mom, I just saw the news broadcast everywhere online," her daughter said, her voice full of emotion. "Are you completely okay?" "I am perfectly fine, sweetheart," Diana replied, looking out her window at the city lights. "In fact, I am better than fine." "The video looks so awful, Mom. I can't believe someone treated you that way." Diana smiled gently. "Sometimes awful things happen in this world for incredibly important reasons," she told her daughter. "Sometimes they happen so that we can finally fix what has been broken for far too long." 6 months later, the Meridian Grand Hotel had become an internationally recognized symbol of corporate accountability and genuine systemic reform. The grand lobby that had once been the site of a viral discrimination incident now regularly hosted national diversity and inclusion seminars for hospitality leaders from all across the country. Diana Carter stood in the exact same spot on the marble floor where Brittany Walsh had once tried to deny her access, addressing a large group of senior executives who had traveled from around the nation to learn from her company's massive structural transformation. True corporate leadership requires the immense courage to completely dismantle and fix systemic problems, rather than simply hiding individual symptoms, Diana told the crowd. Power isn't about inflicting punishment. It is about creating environments where every single individual truly belongs and can thrive.